Hi, my name is Aaron, and this is my show, Re-Education. So another issue that a lot of people seem to have about anarchism is that it is conflicting somehow with human nature. Now, when I'm talking about anarchism, I'm talking specifically about anarcho-communism, which means anarcho, the abolishment of any unnecessary hierarchies, and communism, the worker control of the means of production. Now, why do people think that anarcho-communism is inherently against human nature? Well, from what I can understand, it's because a lot of people have a very social Darwinist way of looking at, society. A lot of people think that it's a very dog-eat-dog world, the strongest has to survive, and that people are inherently selfish, like you would read in Ayn Rand. But I would actually say that human nature is not that way at all. I would actually say that human nature is quite the opposite. Oh, come on, Aaron, you've turned into an absolute fucking moron. Why would you think that human beings want to care about one another? Well, I don't think that people are inherently always going to care about one another. I don't think that people are necessarily always going to be able to not have struggle for power or struggle for dominance over one another. I think that that's always going to exist, and I don't think that you could ever totally eliminate violence. That's definitely not going to happen, but I do know that under stress, people don't tend to be insane and go crazy and panic and create a bunch of problems. They tend to help one another. Now, what am I talking about? I mean, every single time that you've ever seen any disaster that's ever happened on the news, it always looks like everybody's panicking. I mean, you see a hurricane, people are running around and freaking out and going insane. You see a fire and people are running out the door and there's smoke billowing everywhere and nobody knows what they're doing and it looks like pandemonium. But you do realize that the news media really only projects things if they bleed. They have a word for it. It's called, if it bleeds, it leads. And clearly, the bloodiest things get the most attention. So something that you don't actually hear a whole lot about is the fact that in most crisis situations, people don't tend to panic. And I have a link down in the description below that I would really advise anybody who has any questions about this. I would advise them to take a look at this link and just read through it. It gives you many, many examples of how very good-natured people were able to help others out in crisis situations that just were advertised in the news media as something totally different. One of those situations involved a fire at a nightclub in 1977, I believe. It was presented by the news media as 300 people perished because of panic. Well, when you actually look at the facts, nobody was panicking. Actually, what had happened was a lot of the people that were staff there, they had no fire training at all, and they stayed and helped all of the people that were trapped inside the building out the door. And in fact, everything that happened up until the point of which the fire got completely out of control, the people that were there were handling the situation in a completely rational way. They tried to put out the fire in the first place by using a fire extinguisher, and when that didn't work, they tried to get a hold of the authorities to see if they could get the fire department there as soon as they could. And as the smoke was billowing through, people were leaving in an orderly fashion, just slight nudges, giving each other a little bit of a push of encouragement to get out of the smoke-filled building and not die. The people handled themselves just fine. And it was never advertised as that. It was never broadcast as the people being able to handle that situation. It was broadcast as complete pandemonium, 300 people died. Well, how did those 300 people die? Well, it turns out that they were all stuck in a back room. They didn't even know that the fire was happening until the very last moment, and when they did get announced that the fire was happening, they had a comedy show going on at the time. And the comedian, maybe thinking that it was part of the show or thinking that it was just a lark, went along with it and kind of just made a few jokes, which may have resulted in those people ending up being trapped inside of that back room and perishing from smoke inhalation. It wasn't panic that killed those people, it was a mistake. But I think that really shows a bit of a narrative on human behavior and in general. Now, I know that this is only one single story, and like I said, down below there are plenty more. But it shows something more real about human nature than I think is broadcast to most people. I think that human nature is something that cherishes the development of humankind. And I think that anarcho-communism directly reflects those exact goals. Like I've said before in other videos, anarcho-communism reflects the ideas of promoting health and well-being and reducing pain and suffering, because when the people are themselves the bosses, they don't want to see themselves suffer. It's the most obvious thing in the world. I know that when you do see crisis situations and there are people freaking out and panicking and looting and doing all these sorts of things, most of the time the buildings that they're looting are totally empty, and the majority of crime that happens is completely non-violent. I don't know. It's just something to think about. Anyway, my name is Aaron. This has been Re-Education. Thanks for watching.